and welcome to the Austin Forum Upload, where we explore pervasive and emerging technologies and their influence and impact on society.
In this series, we upload direct-to-you information, opinions, and insights from thought leaders, experts, and creatives from Austin and beyond.
They'll share their perspectives through conversations, interviews, debates, discussion, and more.
I'm Jay.
I'm John.
And I'm Barbary, and we co-produce the Upload for the Austin Forum on Technology and Society.
I'm Jay Boisseau, and welcome to the Austin Forum Upload. I'm very pleased to have with me as my co-host for this episode, Christina Newbrough.
Thanks, Jay. Really happy to be here. Excited to welcome Chief Programming Officer of South by Southwest, Hugh Forrest.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, Hugh, thanks for coming back. And, of course, you now know you're on the hook to come back and do this every year. We're big fans of South by, and we love to have this retrospective and look forward to next year.
Jay, as always, I hope you can find some more interesting guests than me. But if you can't, I'm always here and always available.
Well, you're nice and humble, but everybody else finds you interesting. So that's what we care about.
Nice.
So we'll just start with the big softball question right off the bat. It's been about 6 weeks since South by 2019. Both Christina and I were there, and of course you were there night and day. Big picture, how do you think it went? How did it compare to previous years? How excited are you about the growth and changes in it?
Yes, it's been about 6 weeks. We've spent a lot of this time since March reading through feedback, whether that be email feedback from attendees, whether that be press accounts, blog accounts, social media. I think it was a really strong year. Although I also don't exactly know what the data is that makes it particularly a strong year. My kind of theory is that where we are as a nation and as a world at present, which is in many ways divided, that a lot of what we offer at South by Southwest really resonates with people. There are a lot of very inspirational talks, a lot of great information. We offer sensory overload, so it's 3 or 4 days of not having to look at headlines, read news, and again, I think we've traditionally had some of our strongest years in years when there's been more kind of turmoil in the world, and perhaps that's one of the explanations for the strong positive feedback we got this year.
So turmoil equals good times at South by.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's an even wittier way to say that. But
it's true for consulting too.
There you go. It's true for news also, right? So there are lots of things that thrive in turmoil.
Well, so what were some of the big themes that emerged out of this year? I mean, I know there maybe wasn't a single hit app or launch or something that you can point to, but there's always many new things that emerge. What were some of the themes that really came out strong in South by this year?
Well, with so much content over many, many days, there are many different themes that you can pull out of the event. I think some of the strongest, one that we've had and seen for the last few years, continued very strong interest, very high interest in AI, the possibilities as well as the potential pitfalls. We've seen that. We saw that in 2018, 2017. I think we saw it again in 2019. Strong focus on transportation systems, future of transportation. That certainly flows into one of your passions, which is smart cities. One of the things that was certainly a little different about South by Southwest 2019 is a strong focus on politics. We had, I believe, about 8 total candidates for the 2020 election at the event. And I think while there may not have been a breakout app at the event, I think you can say that Mayor Pete, his moment kind of started at South by Southwest, and he got as much runway out of the event as any company, app, person, or thing. So that was kind of neat to see. He spoke on a couple of different panels. He also did the CNN town hall event and got some push that way. Some other things that were big this year or bigger this year in comparison to what we've done in the past. We did a cannabis track this year. as a way to add energy to the second half of the week. And Jay is smiling because
to add energy with cannabis.
I am always teasing Jay that we ought to do more cannabis stuff at the Austin Forum. But that was pretty popular, and I think it's also interesting that we typically pick out the tracks for the coming year in the previous summer, and summer of 2018, when we were talking about this, it seemed a little bit like, do we really want to do cannabis? Is that the right thing to go? And in the space of 6, 7, 8 months, cannabis has become that much more mainstream. One of our more popular or more controversial speakers in the cannabis business track was former U.S. Speaker of the House, John Boehner, who, as you are probably aware or could be aware, is the number one lobbyist for the cannabis industry now. And if there's
not see that coming, by the way.
If there is anything that says 2019 all over it, a Law and Order Republican becoming the chief lobbyist for the cannabis industry is that. So again, those are a few of the big things that came out of this year's event.
So 2019, could we see political campaign launching as a part of a South by Southwest experience?
Well, I definitely 2019 was evidence that this community, particularly in this kind of time frame, has an appetite for that. And it was interesting.
Were you approached by any campaign managers after the fact?
Well, I think there's a lot of interest in what will happen in 2020. I think one of the while not as much of a moment as, say, Mayor Pete, it was certainly, again, interesting, quote unquote, that Elizabeth Warren certainly teed up her South by Southwest appearance with talking the next day saying that the tech industry should be broken up. And that was, and you know, if you want to go into the lion's den,
she might not be invited back. That
was the way to do it. But she said
that after her appearance, didn't she?
That was the day before.
Oh, it was the day before. Okay.
She spoke on Saturday. She said that on Friday, and she, pretty well played at her hand on her part. She had a full house at ACL for her session. I'm not sure that everyone agreed with her. But again, she's got some pretty interesting arguments on why that should happen. And her ultimate argument is that you break up these tech companies and you create more innovation, which is interesting. Again, not everyone agrees with that. For next year, it's interesting. The Texas primary will be a week before South by Southwest. So on the one hand, maybe a little less incentive. And certainly I would imagine by March 2020, we'll have fewer than 20 Dems in the race, that it'll be pared down a little bit. But I think you'll see that again, that candidates want to use the event in the same way that they've seen filmmakers, bands, tech people use the event before, which is that South by Southwest is a great way to connect with a lot of important people over a short period of time. And also for politicians, it is a great way to raise funds when you have a fairly affluent audience in Austin, and they can do one or two fundraisers and create some fuel for their campaign that way.
So following up on Christina's question, do you expect to be approached by more candidates next year? Do you expect, and increasingly in future years, as people realize, wow, this is a great way to reach a lot of people, we're going to call South by Southwest and see if we can get a slot?
Well, I think it's a little bit time dependent. 2020, yes, we will see. I would be shocked if we did not see an equal, if not greater, amount of political candidates from all stripes at the event, and would love to see more from the right or from the Republican side of the aisle. But if you look forward to 2021, I would imagine that would drop off a little. You may have some Senate candidates for 2022 at the event, but again, kind of dependent on time. Certainly, 2019, this year's event, we had more politicians than ever before. But again, this is not entirely unprecedented. We're lucky enough to have President Barack Obama here in 2016. We had Vice President Biden here in 2017, albeit talking about the cancer moonshot. We've had various other politicians over the years, but this year certainly more so than ever before.
Do you feel as instrumental in the programming that South by Southwest has a particular responsibility or position to, allow tracks that go into the deeper political aspirations and divisions in our country? Or can you, if you had to take a position on something, would you feel comfortable using South by to do so?
Well, I think South by Southwest is always a reflection of the larger world, what's going on outside. And you saw that with so much political interest this year. I would also say that for 2019, we doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on our efforts at more inclusivity and diversity within the speaker lineup, and that is certainly reflective of the times that we live in. One of the debates, heated debates or not, that we have a lot of at the South by Southwest office is, what happens if you get a call from the White House saying that the president wants to come to Austin? Well, no, we wouldn't do it. Well, you'd be crazy not to do it. And I think the kind of landing point that we're a little bit comfortable on is you would not give this president or any president simply a soapbox. I can say that word. But if you pair this person, whoever this person may be, with an interviewer who will ask tough questions, then you've got something there that we would definitely pursue.
Well, so let me ask how this was perceived and how your feedback forms went, and if you can break it down by sort of the tech community. So, for example, I'm in the tech community. I participate in the tech track, taught a workshop in the tech track. I didn't want to see the political content at South by. That doesn't mean that I disagreed with it, but having it. But I didn't go see Elizabeth Warren. I didn't see any of the other political speakers. That was my chance to really go to tech and creative kinds of events and whatnot. And I know some other techies that lamented the incursion of politics into this. But I pointed out to them, I said, there was plenty of non-politics at the same time. You can go to anything you want. Did you get much negative feedback from the tech community? I mean, not just about maybe Elizabeth Warren's position, but and maybe some of the tech community agreed with that, actually. But did you get much negative feedback about the role of politics in and the presence of political figures in South by Southwest?
We didn't really get that kind of feedback. That doesn't mean that that's not a meme out there, and it's just a meme that we haven't seen. But I think that repeating back what you said, Jay, with the size and scale of South by Southwest at this point, I'm entirely comfortable with, we'll offer the politicians over here, but if you don't like that, you can see smart cities here, or you can see food here, or you can see sports here, or you can see social impact here at the same time. And so you may never even interact with that kind of content. Whereas a lot of other great events that are smaller, if Elizabeth Warren is coming in, that's the only thing at any given time, and you're kind of forcing everyone to see that. But again, South by Southwest is just emerged and evolved as a kind of different beast in terms of the scale that it's reached in its current state.
It truly has. I tell everybody that I work with and for every year that it's my Holy Week. And every year I fail to get people to recognize that as my religion. That shows
your particular craziness, Jay. Yeah. But, another one, and I'm remiss not to mention it, but certainly one of the other big stars at this year's event, 2019 event, was AOC, who turned out to be probably our most popular speaker this year. And I think you can, on the one hand, you can take your perspective, Jay, well, I don't really want to see politics, but I think that what AOC represents fits in very well with what has traditionally been popular at South by Southwest. She has strong opinions from a left perspective, and you may or may not agree with that, but She uses social media very well, very aggressively. And South by Southwest, if nothing else, you can always say that, we are the epicenter of social media. So again, in retrospect, it makes complete sense how popular she was at the event.
I'm in tech too, but I have a small soft spot for politics. I work for a small startup company called the Helper Bees, and we're very hypermetric focused because we have to be. We live and die by our numbers, right? I know you haven't fully looked at the data yet, but just curious, you've done this for 30 odd years. What does success look like to you? How do you know if the festival is successful? What do you define as success?
That is a great question, and unfortunately my answers are much less sophisticated there than I should be. I think that every year we measure, a part of the measuring stick on success is, did we have, plain and simple, more registrants than the year before?
Are registrants, just curious, are they check-ins or actual tickets purchased?
Tickets purchased.
Okay.
Versus check-ins. There's always a portion of people.
By the way, what is that number? How many interactive registrants were there this year?
Between paid and comp, it's in the 30,000 figure. Yeah. If everyone was in the same room at the same time, thank goodness they are not. But there was a period from, say, 2005 to 2012 where badge sales were just growing exponentially. We've much more leveled off in that growth at this point, which is a good thing. And I'm always trying to preach the mantra that quality is much more important than quantity. The data that I'd really like to have more of is having better figures on how many people are in what speaker room and what does that mean about our audience. We will scan badges. There's an RFID chip in a badge. They're scanned going in. Inevitably, that data is not quite perfect, and because people may not leave a room beforehand, there's some anomalies there. So that data is never as good or as strong as we'd like. Given your background, Christina, one of the things that we were, surprises and or things that we were disappointed on is over the last, 5 years, some of the most popular content has been the content that focused on social good, social impact, giving back to the community. For 2019, that content was almost exclusively located at the Lion Hotel, and it just did not do as well as we anticipated. Probably another reminder there of the importance of location. I mean, the Lion Hotel is 2 blocks away from the convention center, but those 2 blocks can make all the difference in the world, and can be the difference between a panel room, a session room that is full, and one that isn't. But nonetheless frustrating at our end because we programmed some really great stuff there that we wanted more people to see, and they didn't necessarily see it. But
that's good that you're at least tracking that. I mean, I know there's more advanced things you can do and will explore each year, and I've talked with some of your tech staff actually about this kind of stuff. But it's good that you track that well enough to know that a track that had been very, very popular, the location, even just 2 blocks away, made a big difference. And I would even have a hypothesis on that. I would go to a lot of the tech for social good content in the past, but often I'd pick a talk here and there adjacent to a talk on AI or something else. And when it was all concentrated in one place and more than a short walk from adjacent talks that I might want to see on other topics, I confess I didn't make it to the line for those
I'll
talks this year.
fully admit, I got lost at the line this year. Honestly, I was like, where is this stuff? And I just bailed and went to the bar.
Well, I will say that the Line is a great venue. You should check it out at some point, whether it's South by Southwest or some other time. It is, it's the old roof. Radisson, old Sheraton. Mm-hmm. It's got great views, got a really neat restaurant. It is rebranded as an art hotel, so good stuff there. The other thing that didn't do as well this year as we anticipated, and probably is the same reason, is the content at the Fairmont. which was the brands and marketing content, which has been extremely popular in years past. And so why did that do less, was less crowded this year than in previous years? And my unsupported by data explanation is that we kind of changed the layout of the convention center this year, and it was a little bit on its own island. I'll also say that, our understanding of whether these sessions did well or not so well is less data informed and more just eyeball informed. Wow, there are a lot of open seats in that room. Again, our use of data, we can still improve a lot in that in future years.
What other surprises did you have this year? And I mean from the tech community in particular, since this is a tech and society focused podcast.
Well, I think other surprises that we had this year were, again, how popular the AI stuff. I'm still kind of amazed that continues to peak.
I heard there was a really great workshop taught by one of the hosts of this show and the sound engineer to my right.
That was my biggest surprise of the event, right?
Oh, I set myself up for that one, I think, actually. Yeah.
I think we're also surprised and amazed and pleasantly, very pleasantly so, at the continued growth in international participation at the event.
I noticed that actually observation as an attendee in the last 4 years, there was a significant growth in just people around, people mingling.
Yeah.
I'm really amazed at how many countries, cities and countries have their own venues and their
really
own
cool.
programming throughout South by Southwest. I must have been in several European countries' venues during South by Southwest this year.
Yeah, you saw, continued strong push from the EU at this year's event. But you're also seeing growth from China, Japan, Korea, a lot of Asian countries, and that's fascinating. I like this on several different levels. It's neat that it's one of the few times in Austin where you hear different languages on the street. I think it's also neat in the 2019 climate where we are an event that shows that international participation is important and that we are a global community and that we are not stuck in our little national outlook, and kind of enough said coyly there. But that international growth is really exciting to see. Something that was another kind of trend at this year's event, and not necessarily unexpected given the current climate, but a lot of sessions, a lot of talk on this general theme of digital distrust, techlash, and that certainly is reflective of the times where we live. We're recording this session a day after Facebook has banned Alex Jones and others from their platform, but we're in a post-Cambridge Analytica world where more and more people are understanding, realizing the challenges of privacy, that tech companies may have more of your data than you thought, and how are they using that? And again, that was a interesting discussion and thread that wove through a lot of the content at the event. And it's also interesting when I think about that to compare back to one of our more famous alums from South by Southwest, previous speakers, was when Edward Snowden talked here via,
not exactly here, but presented here.
Presented here via the magic of the interwebs.
Yeah.
But when you think about that in the context of 2019, at that point it was, watch out, the government has all your data. And fast forward 3 or 4 years, and it's now, watch out, private companies have all your data. It's interesting that it took a lot of us that long to, put A and B together and equal C.
We had an Austin Forum event, as you know, on social media and data and privacy about a year ago. And we had different panelists on that. And I really appreciated the guy from Spreadfast, who pointed out, look, as a customer, you want companies to know you. They've always wanted to know you, to make better products for you, support you better, serve you better. And you actually want that. The question isn't whether they know you better. The question that you really should be asking is, what are they doing with that data outside of what they do? I mean, Apple's famous for this, right? Apple, certainly they collect lots of data on what you do with their devices, but they're famous about their stance, which I tend to believe as an Apple user, that they don't sell the data to anyone else. And so you don't have to worry about where else in the ecosystem that data is and what else it's being used for. But the reality is, every company you interact with is going to have and want to have increasing amounts of data on you to serve you better. And it's up to you in some cases to figure out what data you're willing to share and which companies you're willing to support based on their policies for what they do with that data. And I do think government regulation is hugely important there, but it doesn't seem to be able to keep up with the rate at which companies can figure out new analytics techniques and new ways to share that data and monetize it. And that's what concerns me, is how, you're right, it's more about whether the companies have it than government, because it's all monetizable. So how do you we can put pollution controls on things, but it's difficult to put tech controls on things. Data is so easy to move and
Well, I will
share.
say that, and harking back to a conversation that you and Christina and I had before we began taping here, we do not, for South by Southwest, there is an RFID chip in your badge, but that RFID chip just goes to a number which is not associated to a name. So I cannot,
It's anonymized.
I can't go back to my lab and say, what did Jay go? What sessions did Jay go see? That would be, on the one hand, some really interesting content.
It wasn't the politics ones and it wasn't the cannabis business ones. I'll tell you right now. So,
some really interesting data and probably monetizable data. But it is something that we have made a decision that is not fair to do.
I'd wager on some level it's and this is probably obvious, it's demographic related too, right? I mean, we're going to move into a time when there wasn't even a question of whether or not you had it. I assumed you had it. Myself, people younger than myself are just willingly, yeah, I know it's assumed. I took this device. I thought you were going to go ahead, do whatever you want with it. So the attitude about control, I think, is going to change. And I'd be curious to see. I mean, we use data a ton in my company and for the benefit of creating better products.
That's right. You guys are taking care of people's
some
health.
Cares, it's related to health. So, I feel like there's a right way to do this. There's an intrusive way to do it. There's always the option. I'm a split Android and Apple person. And so I constantly deselect. No, I do not want to share whatever I'm doing analytics with you to provide better feedback. But I think it's an education piece too. I know to do that.
And I agree. I think that the kind of more nuanced question here, or thought here, discussion point here, is not whether data or not. It's whether, as you say, do I know what the said company is doing with my data, or am I given the option to opt out or not? I would agree that younger users are probably more comfortable with that than perhaps other users. I also think that we'll see more and more just market solutions to this, that you will see some kind of social media company make a run for it that is not free, that it's a $5 a month, $10 a month, and they can potentially monetize on that.
I've been waiting
as
for that.
opposed to your data.
I expect somebody to make that run. I have grown, is it comfortable or just acceptance? I'm now, when I have a social media feed, I know that if I send a mail through Gmail to somebody and then go log into a social media network, I fully expect that ad to be in there about whatever I talked about in that last email. More often than not these days, it is. And I guess I'm okay with that because I make sure that I don't share certain data in Gmail or Facebook or something. But I would pay for that service. I would pay for one that at least had a policy of that and a method of audit, a third-party audit to prove that they were living up to that so that I could trust it. I would pay for that service.
I think so. I mean, I think it would price point determinant, but if you're $5 a month, that seems like a pretty reasonable fee in exchange for holding on to your data.
Although it does beg the question of how many of these $5 and $10 and $15 a month services will people pay for? Because actually at South by this past year, there was the group of industry execs that talked about a new video service, and it was all about short form video,
Right.
and how they thought there was.
Could be.
That's it. And they said, we believe Netflix is going to get theirs, and we believe HBO is going to get theirs, and Disney's not out yet, but we're confident Disney's going to get theirs.
Yeah.
But we think there's still a market for $5 to $10 for this different kind of video out there. And I thought they made some great arguments, but the point is, at some point you run out of 5 here, 10 here, 15 there, and I wonder what that limit's going to be. I love the subscription service model, but eventually the total number of subscriptions becomes a significant number.
Yeah. Great point on Quidby, who they were our opening speaker, our keynote speaker on Friday, March 8th. And I think their presence at the event also, points to another one of the big trends, which is this, ongoing convergence between technology and media, whether that be Disney, whether that be Netflix, whether that be Amazon, whether that be Apple producing their own content.
Right.
We have certainly ventured into a new age here that few of us could have thought would have happened even 5, 7, 10 years ago. And with the various, big buckets that South by Southwest covers, we've become, again, a place for a lot of the innovators in this space to talk about what they're doing.
Right. So a question that always comes up on the tech side of things is diversity. How have you seen the diversity, especially in the tech portion of South by change? How do you feel like it took any steps forward in 2019? Have we sort of plateaued? I know we still have a lot of work to do, but are you seeing good momentum in changing that, or do you feel like it's a lot more work to do?
Well, yeah, of course. I think there is a ton more work to do. I think we have done a much better job as organizers of being conscientious that we can do a better job of leading the way on this. And from our standpoint, that's kind of easy to do. You look at our keynote lineup, and we've got 3 keynotes slot filled and 3 that aren't filled yet, and the 3 are white men. Well, those last 3 need to be women and or people of color. So simply creating a lineup that is more diverse and inclusive, a lineup of speakers, is again relatively easy. Getting more diversity and inclusion within big tech companies, within startups, is a much harder proposition than that. But I think that, again, events like South by Southwest can help lead the way in that. One of the other interesting things about this year's event was the first day was Friday, March 8th, which is also International Women's Day. Our decision was to kind of underplay that, not make a big deal of it, but still try to program some incredibly smart, powerful, innovative, forward-thinking women that day. And I think we were very successful in that. Our opening speaker was Dr. Brene Brown, who's spoken at South by Southwest before. Talks a lot about leadership, about strength, about relationships. She was very, very popular, and I think that set a very strong tone for the event. Other strong women speakers we had on day one ranged from Priscilla Chan talking about the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative to Maria Shriver talking about her work with Alzheimer's, particularly as related to women. So again, I think that set a real tone for the event that resonated throughout the next the week that followed.
What are your initial thoughts for 2020? How will the tech program change?
That is a great question, because we're beginning to talk about 2020 and what kind of tracks we'll do for next year. One of the things that we felt like got a lot of play this year is this concept that as connected as we are with social media, with smartphones, with our computers and with our devices, there is more loneliness than ever before. And do we do more content on that for 2020? I think that is a pretty interesting topic within the kind of things that South by Southwest does well. Other things we've talked about, do we do, for instance, more space stuff? Space has always been popular at South by Southwest. Do we push even harder on that? I think space has a lot of things that are really sexy about it. It's aspirational. Think of, how Kennedy used the space program in the 60s, early 60s to create a different narrative. Although the more cynical side is that, now that we've screwed up the Earth, do we all go to Mars and try to start over
again? We'll get it right next time.
Yeah, we will get it right next time. It may take a few years, light years to get there, but it's all good. I think that, other technologies are hard to be certain if they're ready to cover more aggressively. And I'm thinking, for instance, do we do a quantum track for 2020? I tend to think that quantum, outside of our friend Worley here in Austin, most people don't understand it, and it's still a few years before it's even relatively mainstream. And timing is everything, and we don't want to get in too early on that. But now is the time of year where we can have those kind of big picture discussions on, wow, what is going to be really hot next spring? And the good news in those discussions, there are no right answers and no wrong answers, and will probably, be something that completely surprises us. But the more we talk about it, the more likely we're going to get kind of close to it.
The one that I keep hoping will really blow up is CRISPR. And obviously it's one of the most important discoveries of the last century. I'm hopeful that the amount of content around it will blow up. At one of the film festivals earlier this year, I saw the one that Dan Rather was one of the producers for, Human Nature, I think it was called. And it's just an amazing technology, probably right up there with computers and space flight and the web as among the most revolutionary technologies and potentially societally transforming technologies. Do you see much growth in the kinds of content at a South by Southwest? So even if there's not a lot of content, doesn't mean it's not important, but do you see, does South by have a voice for that kind of content? Is there a place for that?
I think we do. We had 2 years ago, 2017, Jennifer Doudna, who is one of the kind of co-founders, pioneers of the CRISPR movement, spoke here. That the film that you referenced played at South by Southwest this year, and Dan Rather was on a panel afterwards, and apparently that panel was packed. So I think there is a ton of interest in that. It is similar to AI in that, wow, this technology can do some really amazing things, but you can imagine that in the wrong hands, it can also do some really challenging things. And we've already seen that with the doctor in China, who I believe is now in prison for the CRISPR work he's done. So I think we'll see more of that content that is traditionally fallen within the CRISPR content is traditionally fallen within the health and med tech. Although you've seen some CRISPR stuff happen in, startup tracks and some of the other things that we do.
Well, great. Well, Hugh, thank you for spending this time with us. Any last thought, Christina, any last questions you've got, or?
I could go on for a while, so feels like this was great for today. Yeah,
we're fortunate to get access to Hugh more than most folks, but thank you for stopping by and sharing all this with our audience.
Well, thanks for having me. And again, it was a strong year, and I always, and Jay knows this from me talking at Austin Forum, always like to push what our mission statement is, because as much as South by Southwest changes, hopefully this doesn't. And that mission statement is that whether it's CRISPR, whether it's autonomous cars, or whether it's data, we are all about creative people, and South by Southwest helps creative people achieve their goals.
Great final point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Forum Upload. You can listen to additional episodes and check out a schedule of our monthly in-person events at austinforum.org. The Upload is a production of the Austin Forum on Technology and Society, a nonprofit organization here in Austin, Texas.